This is Steve McNallen of the Asatru Folk Assembly, bringing you the latest on the revival of the ancestral faith of Northern Europe and the awakening of the European-descended peoples everywhere. The gods and goddesses never went away. They are with us always, and now they stir, and we reclaim our spiritual birthright. A glorious dawn awaits. Hail our awakening! Hail, Asatru, rising. Maurice in New England writes to say, I've always lived in rural areas and feel a deep affinity with nature and the earth, especially here in New England. And the more I thought about it, the stronger the attraction to Asatru became. When I came upon Asatru's 9 noble virtues, it didn't take long for me to realize that this was and always had been my code, my religion, and the essence of my spirituality. I just hadn't known that it had a name, a history, and organized practitioners. A follower of our faith in California writes to explain why he joined the Asatru Folk Assembly. To grow as a man, to evolve, to learn, to lead my people back home, to be a better father, to be the best man that I can. Well, his determination to grow leads me straight into the subject of this podcast. What does it mean to evolve personally? Why should we do it? And how can we change ourselves? We've all known people who were not dependable, or who betray a trust, or who let weakness get the best of them. And unfortunately, some of these folks follow our faith of Asatru. No, they're not typical. But even one such person holds us back, tarnishes our reputation, and makes it harder for us to achieve Asatru's potential. Folks are fond of saying that nobody's perfect, and they're right. None of us are. We may not have their particular set of faults, but none of us are where we could be. If we were, we'd be Odin. But does it matter? If Asatru works for us as individuals, isn't that enough? My answer to that question is no. It's not enough to just sort of stumble along, failing dramatically, to meet the minimum Asatru standards. Here is why. We are trying to build Asatru as a strong, coherent way of life in the modern age. We've come a long way. Years ago, in the old days, drinking was a problem, but anybody who has been at our gatherings in recent decades can testify that folks who have too much alcohol are rare, and they tend to not get invited back. Similarly, we have turned away those addicted to negativity or who have agendas that they would impose on us. We are now much more attractive to normal people with real lives, real jobs, real families. Forging the sword of Asatru requires high-grade ore, impurities burned away, tempered and hardened by spiritual discipline into a fine blade. Asatru may be the last hope for the European-descended peoples. I won't attempt to justify that statement in this podcast, but all the evidence, demographic, cultural, political, spiritual, screams that we as a people are in trouble. We have a duty to the gods, to the ancestors, and to those yet to be born to ensure the survival and the high status of our kind. To fulfill our responsibilities, we must develop our virtues, our capabilities, and our spiritual prowess to the highest possible level. Years ago, I had a friend who was deeply involved in politics. He tried it all: newsletters, meetings, distributing literature, forming a community. But as the months turned into years, he realized that there was a problem, namely the quality of the people with whom he was trying to work. Some were stupid. Others were bright, but twisted with negativity. Others were incompetents or cheats or unreliable. Almost no one met the standards needed to form a functioning community of dedicated activists. Finally, my friend jettisoned the riffraff. No more meetings, no more newsletters, no more entertaining bums. His ideals remained unchanged, but he turned to other methods to promote them. In the years that followed, he worked with a relative handful of idealists, teaching meditation techniques for personal spiritual evolution. He accomplished more for his cause and for himself in the next year or two than in all the painful and discouraging years that had gone before. Change yourself and you will change thousands, he wrote. And he was right. The way to purify the iron of Asatru lies in spiritual evolution. With effort, we can transform it into a fine steel sword with which to hack out our destiny. Strangely enough, Ananda, a yoga community here in Nevada County, provides a shining inspiration for us. Now, yoga is not really my thing, so it took me a few years to overcome my preconceptions about these folks. In time, I came to know quite a few of them, and I realized that they have a lot to teach us. Members of this community are expected to meditate twice a day. Before they are allowed into residence at the community, they undergo a year's screening process that involves living under primitive conditions and meditating a lot. Once admitted, their financial contributions to Ananda shames most Christians and almost all Asatruer. Of course, you can always dismiss this level of commitment as the result of brainwashing or of cultism. But I've known these people, and I don't believe it. Some Asatruer rationalize their lack of effort on behalf of the gods and lack of monetary commitment as a sign of independence and freedom. These are the Asatruer who think they're being generous when they pitch in the change from their beer money. Similarly, they scoff at any form of spiritual discipline. We're rough, tough Vikings, and we don't do stuff like that. They would have nothing but contempt for the yoga practitioners at Ananda and label them as misguided and exploited. But are the folks at Ananda mindless robots, hypnotized sheep? On the contrary, I found them intelligent, friendly, and dedicated. They are doing a lot of things right, and the root of it all is spiritual practice aimed at spiritual evolution. We all need to work at improving ourselves, not randomly, not in a hit or miss manner, but in a systematic and deliberate way. So, how do you do this? Number 1, assess yourself. The first step is to take a look at where you are. Edred Thorson, in his book, 9 Doors of Midgard, describes a procedure in which the individual makes 2 lists, one reflecting his or her desirable traits, and another of undesirable characteristics. This isn't something to be done in a few minutes. A number of days should be given to the task. Simply put, the idea is to increase or strengthen the good points and decrease or eliminate the bad ones. Number 2, stress yourself. It's easy to get into the habit of just going with the flow. Evolution, however, requires stress. Learn to push yourself in some way every day. This may be physically, mentally, or spiritually, or some combination of these. The important thing is to remind yourself not to take the easy way out. Number 3, strive to serve. Asatru certainly has an individual, private aspect, but we do not live in a vacuum. Our spiritual practice should not be so self-centered that we slip into a sort of narcissism, isolated from others. Our talents and capabilities should be brought to bear in service to the gods, to the growth of Asatru in general, and to the folk. And number 4, exercise your spirituality daily. The Ananda people meditate twice a day, in addition to numerous other religious duties and events. Each of us should seek our equivalent of these daily devotions. My personal routine includes an assortment of simple rituals and rune work. Your own practice will be different, something adapted to your needs. The important thing is to be consistent, to find a program of self-improvement which you can maintain over a long period of time. An overly strenuous regimen, which you drop after a few days, is not as good as a more modest one that becomes a long-term habit. The future of Asatru depends on us. We are the metal from which the sword is fashioned. If we are weak, Asatru will be weak. If we are strong, Asatru will reflect that strength. And today is a good day to start. Change yourself, and you will change thousands. This is Steve McNallen of the Asatru Folk Assembly, www.runestone.org. I'll be back next week.